up? What up? I am Emmanuel Dion, and this is another episode of Unraveling the Agenda Against Black Masculinity. Give me 1 second here. I got an echo going on. All right. A man under covenant does not merely provide. That is not what we are limited to. In the old school times, in the old school ways, in the old school days, they thought that that was just sheerly being a man. He covers, and the covering is different from income. The son learns where authority lives by watching his father stands. Strike the covering and I fall immediately. It fractures slowly from the inside. So, some questions I'm going to throw in while I'm speaking for you all to be able to answer is what does a black man's presence in the house actually do that his absence removes? Where do you understand? Where did you under, where did your understanding of manhood first come from? Who put it there? What does it mean to govern power versus merely to occupy it? Those are some questions that we have. And for those who would like to join us on tonight, join us on stage to speak your piece. This is an open discussion. This is a community think tank. And when we see this come up, we're expecting all hands on deck. I am merely one man. I thought I did not cover every aspect. My thought does not cover everything. That's why I open it up for discussion so that community can chime in to this discussion. So the father shapes the image of manhood for 2/3 of men. Okay? For 2/3 of men. When the father is removed, the screen fills the vacancy. The school disciplines but instruction, and the prison removes, but the courtroom processed. The wound accumulates compound interest across generations. So data points to this. Let's look at some data. So 66% of men identify their father as the primary shaper of their understanding of manhood. So if we remove the father, the vacancy gets filled by someone less interested in the son's future. 33% of young men, between 18 and 33% of young men say television and film shape their view of man. Only 1 in 5 say social media screen is not passive. It trains the eye, then the soul. Okay. So 8% to 18% of black boys are 8% of K through 12 enrollment and account for 8% of suspension and disciplines the body and send spirit elsewhere. So research shows black boys as young as 10 are perceived as older, less innocent, and more culpable. The system reads danger where instruction is needed. So there's a 25.2% plus around 25.2% of black suicide rates of those who want to unalive themselves. It rose to 25.2%. Okay, and let me get my mic straight here. I was told my mic is going in and out. Is that a little bit better? Is that a little bit better? Is that a little bit better? All right. So 25.2% of Black unemployment rates rose from 2018 to 2010, 10 years old. 24 years old rose 29.4%. So the pain turned inward. Generation chose silence over survival. We have 1,218 per 100,000. Black adults are incarcerated at this rate, roughly 5 times the white adult rate. So fatherhood cannot function through a prison phone. So let's look at the Black father involvement. Among Black fathers living with their young children, the majority report daily hands-on care. The stereotype does not survive the data. Let me pause for a moment. Let me get my mic straight. One moment. All right, all right. We were having a little bit of issues with the microphone. My apologies. Because everything is working fine. Everything's plugged up and good to go. So if I have anything else, my apologies. Stick with me. This episode is going to be fantastic. We're going to hit a lot of points. We're going to cover a lot of ground. And I look forward to really sparking off this conversation. Okay. So, among Black fathers living with their young children, the majority report daily hands on care, bathing, feeding, dressing. The stereotype does not survive the data. The obstacle is not willingness, the obstacle are structure. So, just some more questions for you all. Which statistic surprised you most? And why did it? If the father shaped 66% of men's understanding of manhood, what is the weight of removing him? Who fills the instructional vacancy when the household fractures? So I'll take one of these questions and I'll put it up here. If the father shapes 66% of men's understanding of manhood, what is the weight of removing him? So so the numbers name the breach, and now let's look. I'm gonna go to a quick clip here to hear a public argument. Some people see evolution, some people see insecurity, some see attack. The function of the next clip is to pull all three into the same room. But first, even before we do that, let me back up a little bit and let's define masculinity. Let's define Let me pull up the definition here. Masculine is an adjective used to describe traits, behaviors, roles traditionally associated with men and boys, such as strength, boldness, and self reliance. The concept blends both biological sex and socio-cultural expectations, varying widely across different cultures and eras. All right. So this is a this is a definition of the word masculine. So let's define it. right? Let's get it in. Masculine is used to describe traits, behaviors, or roles traditionally associated with men and boys, such as strength, boldness, and self-reliance. The concept blends both biological cuts off here, uh, consumes both uh, both biological sex and socio-cultural expectations, varying widely across different cultures and areas. That is dictionary.com. That's just the first thing that pulls up. Okay. So now that we've defined that, let's look at a clip here. I'm going to go to a clip. This clip is just a quick little debate. Is black masculinity being threatened? Okay. Is black masculinity being threatened? I'm going to share my screen and then we'll transition into it. Boom. Got that queued up and ready. All right. So let me bring it back here and we'll kind of skip through it. It's a 12-minute clip, so we're not gonna play the whole thing, just so you can get the Okay, I thought I was sharing my screen. I'm sorry about that.
What we see here in this country, in some instances, do we see the feminization or emasculating of the black male?
I think we see a little bit of and both. Sometimes the feminization comes from being raised primarily by women and not having a male role model in the home or in the community. And as black men, I would say that that is our fault. There's also emasculation. So I do believe that black manhood in America has always been threatened and continues to be threatened. The reason that black manhood in America is threatened, it is because it is considered threatening. I mean, how many times as a black man have you walked into a room and instantly you feel the energy change because you're seen as a threat? You could be dressed in a suit and tie just like yourself and myself, Isaiah. It doesn't matter. So black men in this country feel that we have to code switch. We feel that we have to smile more. We feel like we have to wear, spectacles, even if they're not prescribed, because it gives us a softer, non-threatening look. So I believe that the biggest threat to black manhood in America is the negative stereotypes that are put out in the public about us, which causes people to judge us and misjudge us before they even.
You're watching the Isaiah Factor Uncensored.
And welcome back to The Factor Uncensored. Author Scott Galloway that has the nation talking. It addressed how we're losing what we know as a next generation of American men. He says some young males are locked up in their basements with artificial intelligence, far-right websites, gaming, and incapable of socially surviving in the real world, or even some are afraid to date women. That has also spurred additional conversations about what some call the media's attempt to emasculate black men. We've seen some high-profile black males in dresses, heels, and painted fingernails. But what does all of this mean? Is it the feminization of the black man, or people jumping to conclusions? What happened to freedom of expression? We have a panel here to talk about it tonight. We have activist Derek Muhammad, Ian Haddock, and former NFL player Reggie Rusk. Now, guys, we want to lay the groundwork. We're not talking about sexuality or what someone feels. We're talking about the look and presentation. So, Derek, you and I had this conversation once before about Scott Galloway's book, saying that a lot of, especially some single mothers, don't have that male role model to guide their young sons. And of course, you guys offer a program before that. But what we see here in this country, in some instances, do we see the feminization or emasculating of the black male?
I think we see a little bit of and both. Sometimes the feminization comes from being raised primarily by women and not having a male role model in the home or in the community. And as black men, I would say that that is our fault. There's also emasculation. So I do believe that black manhood in America has always been threatened and continues to be threatened. The reason that black manhood in America is threatened, it is because it is considered threatening. I mean, how many times as a black man have you walked into a room and instantly you feel the energy change because you're seen as a threat? You could be dressed in a suit and tie just like yourself and myself, Isaiah. It doesn't matter. So black men in this country feel that we have to code switch. We feel that we have to smile more. We feel like we have to wear, spectacles, even if they're not prescribed, because it gives us a softer, non-threatening look. So I believe that the biggest threat to black manhood in America is the negative stereotypes that are put out in the public about us, which causes people to judge us and misjudge us before they even meet us. So I do believe that, yes, there is an emasculation agenda. And I also do believe that because our presence is not as strong as it could be or it should be, that some of our young boys are tending to take on more feminine qualities instead of masculine qualities.
All right, Ian, let's hear from you. Your thoughts about this topic.
I agree a lot with what Brother Muhammad said, but I also think that we're expanding the construct of what masculinity looks like in terms of expression. Mm-hmm. I think that word is expanding. I think, younger generations are now seeing themselves as like, those things don't matter. How I present myself doesn't matter. I was raised in a house with two older brothers that were extremely masculine, dressed extremely masculine, but like it just wasn't my flair. I wanted to experience wearing a kilt. I wanted to experience wearing different types of clothing. And so I think for me and my expression, it's more about like, I actually don't care about this binary code of what masculinity looks like.
Mm-hmm. All right, Reggie, your thoughts about this?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. I do believe that in our households, without having the father in the house, I go to the schools all the time and I see the anger and the frustration that's coming from young men, because primarily those young men are being raised by women. And the stress on some of these women, I come from a single parent household, so I know firsthand what that's like for a single mother to try to be the mother and also be the father for a young man trying to grow up in this society. And then our kids are consumed with TV, social media. So when they're consumed with these things, it makes, painting the nails, being a little flamboyant, it makes that a norm. And so they don't see much wrong with it. But I think we are losing a lot of our men in our communities, and primarily it's because being raised single parent household with mothers, and those father figures are not there. A lot of times we go to events and there's more women in the room than there are men in the room. So I do believe that that's a huge problem, not having that man role model that can kind of teach a man how to be a man. I think that's a big, huge problem that we're having.
All right, we'll continue this conversation right after the break. Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. Black men?
I think we definitely are under attack. I think the difference in my perspective is that my generation was not only not taught those things, even though I subscribed to them, they were not taught those things. I was taught that I was soft because I didn't play football. I was taught that I was soft because I was a geek. I was taught that I was soft. And so I was immediately ostracized and had to find my way in other ways. And so I don't particularly subscribe to the idea that that is not the culture of my generation, that we have to be those things to be a strong Black man. And I actually think that you are right, that the ideals I have about my expression are really a rebellion to what people said was okay for my existence.
But did you let other folks guide you down that path because you felt like I'm going to be talked about, I'm going to be ostracized if I don't play football? So did that just make you lean that direction because you're trying to rebel?
Well, I would offer that. I would offer that I became a strong Black man despite how I present.
There was a great discussion. So prior to him giving that opinion, the gentleman said, "Who gave us these thoughts? Who made us think that it was okay to wear kilts and things of that nature?" Because he made mention of wearing kilts and doing these other things, but he also mentioned that he didn't have guidance. He mentioned that he did this in rebellion. So is that the same case that we're seeing on a large scale with the younger men that are coming up? And what is the importance, and what is the importance behind said agenda, or is it an agenda, right? Is it an agenda? Is it something that is systematically being done to be able to um, dismantle the Black community or to weaken the Black community? Because we understand that there are certain attributes that a man brings to the table, right? He brings discipline, he brings structure, he brings protection, right? But not just that, but we know that the man brings a certain level of nurture as well. Men are also nurturers. It is a falsehood to think that men too are not nurturers, right? So when we look at this, what is it, and with the Black culture, and who's controlling this image, and who is giving us this influence to make us think outside of the structure, right? And why is it being done? Is it the absence of discipline? Is it the absence of structure, of some type of moral base that gives us a boundary to be able to hold ourselves within? So who controls which image of Black men get rewarded in public? Who is controlling that? Because too often we have the conversation about, like for instance, wearing a dress. Dave Chappelle, Dave Chappelle talked about this as though it was something that was like an agenda of some sort. And I think that when people, you said my sound went down. Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? 1 2 1 2. Put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me. This is what I'll do. Okay, can you put a 1 in the chat if you can hear me? For all those who can hear me? Okay. All right, fantastic. All right. So I had asked a question. Who controls which image of Black men get rewarded in public? Right? Who controls which image Black men get rewarded in public? Okay. While you all contemplate that and answer that, I want to play another clip. I know that I reached a few little stumbling blocks here, but I think that we are good now. So let me expand this and let me play this clip real quick, real short clip.
They come in, it's the writer comes in. I think he's the writer. He's like, Dave, listen, we got this hilarious scene where Martin's sneaking out of jail. So he disguises you as a prostitute. And he put this dress on and, what? This prostitute? No, I'm not doing that. I don't feel comfortable with that. that should have been in the discussion. What? You don't feel comfortable with it? I mean, it's a hilarious bit. All the greats have done it. So, well, if all the greats have done it, it's kind of hacky, right? You're right. So why don't we just not do it? Because I don't feel comfortable wearing a dress. Oh, come on, Dave. Listen, we got it all set up. We're supposed to shoot. Every minute you waste costs this much money. You know, the pressure comes in. Huh. He said, I'm not wearing no dress, man. I'm funnier than a dress. Just give me something funny to say. I don't need to wear no dress to be funny. What am I, Milton Berle? You know, we're going like this. And then finally he's like, and he leaves. And then like the director comes, Dave, it really would be great if you wear the dress. What is wrong? What is this, Brokeback Mountain in here? So then, wear the dress. I don't want to wear the dress. I want to wear this dress. You know what I mean? This is, oh gosh, this guy's so difficult. They leave. Now the producers comes, come on, David would be so great. I mean, and then I started thinking about it. All the comics that I've seen, man, you know, strong brothers, why they be putting us in these dresses? But the minute it was clear, I was adamant, I'm not wearing a dress. I'm not wearing the dress. All right, fine. Think of something else. That comes back 10 minutes later, the whole new scene. Like, damn, how did you write the scene so fast? You know, it's like, so you got to take a stand.
So here we can clearly see that Dave Chappelle is he has his speculations and some of his reserves, and he's looking at the dress and saying, you know, perhaps this is something really bigger going on where there's an agenda, right? And I understand that there's two parts. There's not just one side or one thought process on this. There's multiple, right? And so to really get the juices flowing, I want us to chime in on one other clip that I have. Now, I am going to play this for a little bit more extended because I want to get the juices flowing so that we can begin to have an open discussion about this particular topic. Okay? So here it is. So let me pull it up real quick. Here we go. I got it. So give me 1 second. Here we go. Got it. So let me just play it.
Air quotes, the dress, what it means. Are you submitting to the theory that Hollywood does try to make prominent black men put this on? Like, how do we feel about that?
I believe it.
Because he brought it up a lot, and there was a narrative, there was an undertone all sprinkled through the shit.
He wasn't the only person to say that.
A
lot of people say it over the years.
I do want to ask y'all about in 2 seconds. Do y'all submit to the theory or no?
Yes.
I'm asking the tough questions here today.
I do. I mean, so many, we not in that industry, but so many of them say it, and they say that they're kind of adamantly against it, and they kind of be trying to force it on them almost. You know what I'm saying? Like, they try to...
So the theory is, just to be
clear... You wear a dress,
that
you get ahead.
Yeah, but specifically for black men in Hollywood.
Yes, black men.
Okay.
They lend it to, like, they're trying to emasculate us on camera. Like,
we have
there's
an
a concerted effort.
We have an actress.
That's what I'm saying, man. You said okay.
Set.
Yeah, you said okay.
We have an actress, a black actress right here. I want to toss it to her.
So the only reason why I offer like the tiniest bit of pushback on that is just because I've seen it throughout cinematic history with white men doing it too. Like the first movie that I thought of immediately was Some Like It Hot, 1959. It was Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. And it's a movie with Marilyn Monroe. They witnessed a mafia hit in order to, you know, kind of like hide, they dress as women.
Look, you got them tatted on you?
No,
Bosom Buddies, Tom Hanks, really big comedy
Amazing.
Sitcom that he starred in. Mrs. Doubtfire. There's so many examples of, you know, Tootsie.
But we not.
You're being willfully oblivious.
Yeah.
No. I'm
being willfully oblivious is what you're doing.
Point, though.
No, you don't.
It might.
That point.
calling the firm. This is Jennifer. How may I help you?
Seems, for me personally, seems to be moot in this conversation. Because this conversation is, are black men compelled to put on dresses to get ahead? That didn't say anything about white men in white Hollywood who don't need to wear a dress for certain doors to be open. So if they do wear a dress, then woo, good for them.
Okay, so then
we're talking about the black man plight of wearing a dress in white man Hollywood.
Okay, so then what about the character of Medea? That was written, produced, directed, fully formed by Tyler Perry.
Oh, you're going to keep running. Tyler Perry, his whole story is how I've had to work outside of Hollywood restraints and the Hollywood table. And if I'm not willing to do certain things at that table, then I go build my own. And he went and did that. That don't speak to the problems that black men are facing in Hollywood that we keep hearing about. So why do you run from that specific point? Why do you keep trying to find the outlier?
Oh, it's not an outlier. I was just drawing comparisons, because as many comparisons as there are of black men, wearing dresses for roles in movies and television shows, there is their white counterpart.
Yeah, but the white men don't need to wear a dress to get the roles.
But how do we know? How do we know that?
Yeah, you don't really know. I mean, here's the thing. It's like Tom Hanks.
I'm just asking a question.
I never heard a white man complain about wearing a dress,
but just as an example, I know because they don't. I've never really heard them talk about said agenda. So, for example, Tom Hanks.
So then that's how you know.
When it came to Bosom Buddies, he wasn't a big star at the time. He hadn't even starred in what was the Splash.
No,
you know what I mean? That was really his first shit. So he was like an up and coming, no name actor.
Put you in a dress,
but he didn't have a problem with it. They don't have a problem with it. The problem is the black actors are saying this.
No, the ones that put the dress on don't have a problem with it either.
Because they put the dress on and got the role.
So that's why Tom Hanks not gonna have a problem with it because he put the dress on.
Well, let me ask you guys.
I'm angry that Tom Hanks has entered this conversation.
Well, so let me ask you guys, as the black men in the room, when you see this, when you see black men wearing dresses for roles, do you feel like it's emasculating?
Can I ask you a question, man? You know what you're doing, right? Like you PC, you walk in a safe line. I don't know what's going on, but you're a person, and you've been around a lot of people, celebrities. You've been in these situations. We're asking you, how do you feel about it? Are you saying you've never heard black men actors say that we have to wear dresses in order to get ahead?
This is a thing for us. That's what we keep hearing them say.
No, but that doesn't mean anything that I personally don't have those. I haven't had those conversations or been privy to those conversations. It doesn't mean anything that I haven't been.
Okay.
So that gives us some insight, right? That gives us some insight looking at this clip. I would love to hear from you all and see how you all chime in on this. Do you all believe that there is an agenda to emasculate black men in the media? Is that something that you see? Is that something that you observe? Right? Because on the flip side, she's saying that, you have white actors that are doing it, right? White actors like you have Mrs. Robin Williams did it, Mrs. Doubtfire and Tootsie and all of these other films. Not all of them am I familiar with, I'm not going to lie, right? But growing up, I know that most of us were exposed to, a lot of us were exposed to Mrs. Doubtfire. Now, when I watched Miss Doubtfire as a kid, I didn't really think much of it, but it still never entered my mind to put on a dress myself. But in the same sense, I think that it gave us some level of desensitizing, right? It brought down the guardrail, and that we probably had there to not cross-dress, right? To anchor this argument down, I'm going to go to Deuteronomy 22:5. It says, "The woman shall not wear that which pertaineth unto a man, neither shall a man put on a woman's garment, for all that do so are abomination unto the Lord thy God." So when we look at these things and we say, well, why is this order so? Why is there a need to keep them separate, right? Why is there a need to keep them separate? Why is there a need to keep the man in his place and the woman in his place? Well, from my point of view and my thought process, the reason for that is because you can clearly see, like during slavery, right? During slavery, we have all of these exploits that happen. We have such things as buck breaking, right? We have such things as the women being raped, right? But all of these, what they do is weakens the relationship between male and female. You have the man and woman, which would be married, and what would happen? What would happen? The slave master was able to take that woman anytime he felt like it, right? He was able to do ungodly things with that man if he felt like it, right? So what does that do? That breaks down the relationship between the male and the female. That makes the man not be able to protect, right? And when we look back in history and we look at things like the civil rights movement, and we look at Rat Brown and Huey Newton and Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, those are all examples of men leading. Those are all examples of masculine men, right? There was a clip that that I had before. I don't know if I know I don't have it right now. Perhaps I can pull it up. For this, the military was making something called a gay bomb, right? And this gay bomb was to cause the men, and they did like experiments on this. This is a clip that I have on my Instagram. Matter of fact, I think I found it, and I'm gonna play a clip from this right here, right? And this also is what helps me. You know, I'm more so on the side that I believe that it's an agenda. You know, we are not like the other nations. You know, and we are not to be seen in the exact same light. We try to put equal measures for each one of them, but as we can see, it's not the same across the board. For one, if we eat the exact same foods that they eat, we get gout, high blood pressure, heart attacks, and strokes, and we're more susceptible to health breakdowns. We can't even eat the same food. Not only that, but if you put us both within the sunlight, one without who lacks the melanin is not going to do them the same way as one who has the melanin. Right? The melanin in the eyes that causes it to be brown, the melanin within the skin, which is the fruit of the sun, right? So we can clearly see, and even if we look at this on a parallel with the judicial system, there is a standard where, you know, you had the lawyer, I don't remember his name, but he just got out of prison for killing his wife and his son. It got overturned, I guess, because there were some mistakes made, but yet there was a black man who was executed, after he was executed, they found he was innocent. If anybody has these people names, or if anybody can name drop these individuals in the chat, that would really be helpful, right? So you have these experiences and these things that are going on. So it's clear that there is a clear difference between us, right? And how things are judged and laid out. And I would love to hear your thought process on this to see what it is that you think. So I was able to find that clip for them saying that it is like a gay bomb. And I want to play that real quick. Let me remove this and let me add this to the stage, and let's play that.
Military leaders once proposed building a so-called gay bomb, a chemical weapon that could be dropped on enemy troops to make them sexually irresistible to each other. Here's CBS 5 political editor Hank Plant. Hank?
Well, Alan, it was an Air Force lab that proposed this to the Pentagon officials, and it was a Berkeley-based watchdog group that found out about this strange idea for a weapon. Edward Hammond of Berkeley's Sunshine Project tracks military spending. He used the Freedom of Information Act to obtain this proposal from the Air Force's Wright Laboratory to build what's been called a gay bomb. The weapons proposal says one distasteful but completely non-lethal example would be strong aphrodisiacs, especially if the chemical also caused homosexual behavior.
The Ohio Air Force Lab proposed that a bomb be developed that contained a chemical that would cause enemy soldiers to become gay and to have their units
So there is showing them, and then they also show an experiment that was done, right? This experiment has some frogs. It has a male frog, which they were able to successfully turn gay, and it laid eggs as well. So we see this big boom, happening within our community. We see this big boom happening on a large scale, where this type of behavior is promoted and it is rewarded, right? So, is it something? Do you think Black men are rewarded for being emasculated? Do you think Black men are rewarded for being emasculated? So when we are emasculated within Hollywood, is that something that you even see? I put up the question before, I didn't get any responses. But is that something that you see? Is that something that you feel is really going on? Right? So I've already chimed in with what I think. The purpose of manhood. This is 1 Kings 2 and 3. It says, be strong. So David is talking to Solomon on his deathbed. It says, be strong, show yourself a man, keep the charge of the Lord. Solomon received strength and commandment in the same breath. They were never meant to be separated. So it says, be strong, show yourself a man, keep the charge of the Lord. That's what he tells him. So that is showing yourself a man, right? Is keeping the commandments, keeping the ways. Genesis 1:26 and 28 tells us that we were made in the image. In the image, he made male and female, right? Nikita says, a lot of times it's humiliation rituals. Too many Black male stars want the money and fame so bad they'll wear dresses or do feminine, degrading things to be accepted and pushed in the industry. I totally agree with you, right? And we see that time and time and time and time again. And we have recognized this to be part of the humiliation ritual. We see it time and time again. I think Shaq, and you got Young Thug, and you got Kevin Hart. The list goes on and on and on. But after they do it, it eventually gets washed away within. It eventually gets washed away within within the rest of media and just forgotten about. They do it that one time. People have their laughs and everything like that, but then eventually is forgotten about, right? My thought is this. I'm gonna play this real quick.
You can't act like no bitch that only got Tyler Perry famous.
So he said it best. That's what I think. You can't act like no bitch that only got Tyler Perry famous. You see? And so we got that type of imagery going on. But I think the reason why it's becoming so blended, because the men are the protectors. The men are the ones who stand up. The men are the ones who fight for things. So if it's a military, and Nikita says, but yes, there's an agenda. Thank you so much. I appreciate that feedback. So the military is making in 1994, they posed to make a bomb to be able to, it's a gay bomb. So why is that? To make men more docile, right? In order for you to conquer a people, this is what I understand. In order for you to conquer a people, once you take them over, right? You emasculate their men. You make sure that their men are not seen as men and leaders. You demean them. You bring them down, right? And by doing this, you show the people that they don't have the strength that you have, right? So what did they do? They made sure that they constantly took advantage and overpowered the women by being intimate with them, and had sex by force. You understand what I mean? And by doing that, when you remove them, then you give them your religion, you give them your God. And without the man being there, and we see this time and time again. We did a previous episode talking about welfare in the homes, right? And look at that. That was targeted towards the men, because the men are the ones who are charged to keep the structure, and they have to be obedient first. That's why David gave his son that charge in the book of Kings, You understand? So we see that time and time again. All right. We see that time and time again all throughout the narrative, right? All throughout the narrative. So historically, we see that within like I said, within slavery, the black man's body was a site of extraction. His capacity to provide for the household was redirected into the economy of his captor. His labor built wealth he could never pass to his seed. So, with the wife being unprotected, enslaved women stood outside the legal protection. The black man carried no lawful authority over his wife's body. The covering Genesis assigned him was legally abolished. And then we have the children being sold. The seed became market increase. Children were sold not as collateral damage, but as planned commerce. The household was never permitted to become a stable unit. The house stood under another man's permission. The enslaved man governed nothing. His authority over himself or his wife or his children or his property was extinguished at law. So the family was separated as a weapon, and this separation was used deliberately to destabilize black family formation. Connection was a liability, and attachment was vulnerability, and the system exploited the both of them. So before Hollywood shaped the image, slavery controlled the body. Before contract shaped the roles, chains shaped the household. So think tank questions here. How many generations does a structural injury require before the household recovers? I'm going to throw that in the chat here. How many generations does a structural injury require before the household recovers? I'm going to throw it out there. Exodus says, for those of the third and fourth generation of those that hate me, and to the thousands of those that love me. Let's look at another question. Which policies extended the household destruction beyond emancipation? Which policies extended the household destruction beyond emancipation? Well, on this one, I'm going to say it was Section 8, right? The man had to leave the household in order for the family to receive some type of assistance. And for the amount of money that they threw at them, they really could have struggled. They could have struggled themselves. It was no need to be able to take this deal, because in return, it paralyzed us. It paralyzed us. Not only that, but we see that it's something that's being aimed at us and being started at a very young age. I don't know if you all are familiar with seeing this, but this is something that's being aimed towards the children. Even within schools, we see it aimed towards the children, right? Even within the schools, we see this as a common thing within the books, within the policies that are being changed, right? Even within the school policies. I have another clip here. And if you desire to join and say anything in person, I'm going to put this here and I'm going to share my screen. Let me share my screen here. Boom, boom. And let me play this right quick.
Arguing that drag shows were not family friendly, calling them indoctrination of kids. However, Wyndham police say they investigated and found no real threats, but organizers still decided not to have drag performers participate. But at least one drag performer did join the festivities at the last minute today and perform.
All right. So we can see that even within the schools policies are being shaped to aim towards the children, right? They're being shaped to aim towards the children. And that is a breakdown within itself. You understand? So we have this this aim, and we have the school to system pipeline. So a boy who needed instruction received a record. A boy who needed covering received removal, right? So black boys represent 8% of enrollment. They account for 18% of suspensions and expulsions. The discipline gap is not explained by behavior differences. Research on adultification explains a significant portion of it. So black boys are as young as 10 are perceived as older, less innocent and more culpable than white peers of the same age. The child carrying a child's wound is read as a threat and disciplined accordingly. So law enforcement presence inside schools accelerates the pipeline. A behavioral incident that a teacher might have resolved becomes a criminal record when the school routes it through enforcement. So the boy who is suspended is not taught during the days he is absent. The gap in instruction accumulates, and then the gap in discipline deepens. The system calls the result a failure of character. Okay? So we have this intentional programming, this intentional bit of and lack of restraint within this way, right? So they're being aimed and targeted. So it's emasculation, but it is also a blending of things. I don't know if y'all saw the clip, but it's a clip. They were at a gay pride and they were chanting, "We're here, we're queer, we're coming for your children." I don't know if you all have ever seen that before, but it is quite, it's quite disturbing. So just a few questions here, or just a question here. How does a boy form identity when the institution that holds him during the day consistently reads him as a threat? Right? When the system reads him as a threat, how does our youth, how do black men hold themselves day to day in consistency? Well, my answer to this would be, you have to anchor yourself on who you are. If you understand who you are, you will automatically sway against who you are not. You're a sway away from who you are not. For instance, a Hispanic person is not doing the customs of a Chinese person or the customs of an Indian person, right? Because they're Hispanic and they understand that from their youth. So they'll do the ways of a quinceañera or Cinco de Mayo, but they're not doing the ways of a Chinese New Year. Why? Because they understand who they are. That is their anchor and that is their guardrail to keep them from doing certain things. And as a people, that also has to be our guardrail. Our guardrail has to be anchored in who we are. Because if it is not, then we'll get pulled in every direction that they try to pull us in and who we are not. That means the emasculation. And the emasculation attempts for people who have lost their identity, this is one of the gravest crimes against man, right? The reason for that is because if you erase the history, then you can begin to build it on a foundation that is not true. They become unattached. If a branch becomes unattached to the tree, then it eventually dies because that tree is attached to its roots. And it's the root system that waters the entire tree. Well, for us, I believe, and I have come to the Most High has shown me that for us, our roots are deeper than what most people think. Right? Our roots are within the Torah and within the scriptures. It speaks of us. That is the only book and that is the only place where we are spoken of and that we can find ourselves. We can look at our condition and we can find ourselves, because the scripture says that we will become a byword and a proverb. So one of the things about what people call you usually is attached to the character that denotes you, right? So even if it's not true, right? But it can be the same for the flip side. It can be true, right? Or not true. But what people call you, people tend to, it could be like a self-proclaiming affirmation, right? And this affirmation is redundant within time. So within the media, what happens? We see ourselves as all of these different things. I lived in Egypt for a number of years. And when I lived in Egypt for those years, let me tell you, seeing Black people in Egyptian television where there is no Black people around, and it is the only imagery that exists, I understand perfectly why we are seen and the like. So let me tell you movies that would come on. Hustle and Flow. That's one of the movies that will come on. You got Friday, another classic, right? Where we see it as just kind of movies, entertainment, maybe even somewhat relatable. For overseas, they know exactly what they're doing because it paints an image of us, right? And even when we look at people who come over from like Nigeria or West Africa, a lot of them say, don't deal with them. You got to be careful. Why? Because they see us as criminals. They see us as lesser thans, right? Because that is the imagery that is being portrayed of us in all of these places. But what you don't see, because the government found out real fast that the Black man is a problem and he is a threat. So therefore, when you had your Marcus Garveys and you had your Malcolm X's and you had your Rap Browns and your Huey Newton, that shit needed to stop. It needed to stop. I did an episode before talking about the Black Messiah, right? And I talked about this whole concept of how they stripped us down, and it was COINTELPRO. It was government that made sure that we were not a threat. There's gonna be one dominant here, and it's not gonna be us, not in this kingdom. Right? And even if we look and we see what's going on politically, if you look at the redistricting that is going on, the massive redistricting that is going on, and the Blacks are being removed from those chairs in so many places, it shows you who has the real political power, right? And even when Obama was in place, right? When Obama was in place, he didn't help Negroes. One thing that he did make a statement was he said every young boy should have a gay mentor. Why do we need a gay mentor? It's as though he did more for the LGBTQ community than he did for the Black community, and this is on purpose. So when we're looking at things like emasculation, and we're looking at things like I played before, the dress, and we're looking at things that all of these things, right? Even one of the earlier clips that I played when they were having the discussion, and the young man said, well, I did it in rebellion. I didn't have examples. I didn't have men who were there, right? And this has been a long, ongoing thing. This has been long ongoing from the very beginning. Okay? So let's get it here. So even the home structure has been challenged because the mind has been warped in all of these different ways. I'm going to play this quick clip. Give me 1 second. Here we go. Okay, here we go.
No, I'm not blaming Black America women. Are you saying that it's our fault that this happened?
No, I'm not blaming Black America women. I just said that I'm blaming the system. They are victims of the system like the black male.
Well, why do you say that we are castrating you? You say that you want to be the leaders. Okay. Well, what about the Black professional woman? Are you saying that there should be no Black professional woman? Are you trying to deny Black women the right to be creative, the right to function?
We're not asking for you to take a back seat. We're saying that you have got to be astute enough and can view the situation well enough where you just automatically know what your role is and step back. And whenever you want to have that aggressive thing, this is the thing that the young Black man today is not going to tolerate. My old man tolerated because his old man tolerated. It came up for years and years. But today, the young Black man is not going to take it. He's going to be out there as a leader. White America has used Black women to keep the black male in his place.
Let me pause it real quick. So do you think that women have also been used against the Black man? Is that something that you think is going on? In the clip, what's funny is that they're having this gender discussion. And this gender discussion has been going on for a long time. We see it permeating the society now. We see it in podcasts and all of these different talk shows that are going on, right? But this is something that is long time ago. What we were looking at is clips from the 70s. And the same conversation still continues. We're not on one accord, right? So is it something, do you think that the Black woman, that women have been used, or do you think that they've been convinced of society and that society goes against the Black man? You know, for me, I think that it's a little bit of both. I think yes and no. I think it can't be an absolute on any one end. It cannot be an absolute on any one end. Okay? So with that being said, that is it for today. I hope this has been helpful to you. I would love to hear your opinions, thoughts within the chat. And thank you again. I hope this helps wake up some minds and get some thoughts rolling on the issue. With that being said, shalom.